Dr. Rasure, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Shaun. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to have a conversation with you, not only about how cold the weather can be. We have been chatting about how we both live in deep freezes right now, but let's talk about money. And we kind of were saying, let's have a fun conversation about money. And I think we can do that. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm positive we can have a fun conversation about money because money should be fun.
It should be, but yet it can bring out a lot of different emotions. And something that really interests me, and we navigate a lot of this on the podcast, is stories in and around money. So I thought we would start with storytelling, I guess, maybe perhaps a bit of your story. And I think why stories are so meaningful to me is because often we see stories as like this sense of entertainment, but we know that storytelling is a fundamental part of being human. They help us share stories in ways that allow us to emotionally connect. And I think this is why a lot of people are interested in our money stories. So I thought I would start with your story. Now, if the internet is correct, the things that I read on it, can you take us back to, I must have been in around college time when you had these great aspirations to be an estate lawyer. I believe it was a estate lawyer or practicing law in some way or another, but a little hiccup happened and you bombed the LSAT test.
I bombed the LSAT. I had this idea that I was going to be an estate planning attorney, and that really stemmed from my own money story. Right, my dad had multiple sclerosis, and he died when I was 13, and when something like that happens, that's a huge life event for a young person. But both of my parents were insurance agents, and so I grew up around insurance lingo. So I knew things at a very early age, like things like guaranteed insurability and, topics around life insurance. And when my dad died, my dad had been in the service. He'd been in the Air Force, and he had a small life insurance policy from that, which, helped get my family through. But after he was diagnosed with MS, of course, options for life insurance were limited. And so I really had this idea like, okay, it would be so cool to put myself in a role where I can help people plan, for end of life. I lost a lot of passion for that along the way as an undergrad. I had started, doing some radio DJing. I had a stint as a radio DJ in college, and I really kind of just lost interest. And it took me bombing the LSAT to say, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And what I was absolutely certain about, though, was that I wanted to help people with their money. And I didn't know quite how to go about that. And so I ended up finding the consumer economics, now personal financial planning program at University of Missouri. Go Tigers. And I started my master's there. And then I went on, I worked as an insurance agent for a long time in the financial services arena. And then I ended up, getting my PhD, at K-State. Also go Cats. So, it's kind of this trajectory, and through each step of my money story, my history as it relates to that, I've really kind of broadened into and grown as a person in terms of helping and deeply wanting to help people really come to terms with their own money story and rewrite their new story, their new chapters on their terms, which is a feat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You have this, as Dr. Klontz would call it, this financial flashpoint of your father passing and having these insurance proceeds. And really, you can hear how it influences your decisions and wanting to help in this estate lawyer perspective. And it really seems like you've come to more of the human experience of money rather than what the law says we should or should not do. What is it about this human side of money or the human experience of money that has naturally now, or not naturally, has observationally pulled you towards it versus what the law says as your initial, aspirations?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think it's very much a personality fit too. From a personality typing perspective, I've always been drawn to getting to know people and getting to hear their perspectives on life. I'm a bit of a talker. I'm not so much of I don't know the best way to put this, but I really like to know a person's pain. And I know that could probably sound maybe a little uneasy to some of the folks listening, but when you yourself, I think, have been through pain and you have different chapters in your story, I think there is a subset of people like myself who really are okay with leaning into the shadow side, the pain side of life, and want to help walk other people through their pain. And that's, I think, what has really drawn me towards the work I do now, is trying to help others work through the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't like, or the parts of ourselves that need healing. And that's such a privileged place for me to have landed. Because there have been so many people, Dr. Quantz included. I mean, I can think of, 50 people off the top of my head who have been there through me, for me, along the way.
Mm.
And it's been, I mean, it's truly transformative.
So many wonderful things you said there. I was trained as a financial planner. I'm a certified financial planner. And at the time, there was zero conversation. Okay, I won't say zero. Very little conversations around the shadow side that you're talking about, or this psychological side of money. And it was very technical. And what I love about your answer is that, I mean, as humans, we are messy creatures. And often this financial planning field is touted, or we're expected to be this, I guess, non-emotional, perfect calculation that's going to get every money decision right. But like you said, is when you walk in your own, say it's shadows, or come to terms with those parts of us that we may have been ignoring, there's this whole nother element of, I don't know, compassion that we bring towards money that I feel like is what you're really, really talking about. When it comes to compassion, what role, if any at all, do you see it playing in financial conversations?
Oh gosh, I think it's probably the number one priority. And I learned this actually from Barry Tesler. She's kind of one of the OGs of financial therapy, and I mean, she's just amazing with her Art of Money work. And I've had the privilege to work with her in her mentorship program, and she has this and puts forward this beautiful concept. This healing and growth. It happens in kind and compassionate spaces, and when you are somebody who can help cultivate a space that is kind and compassionate, that's where some amazing transformation can come through. But what can really come through for people is this sense of clarity. And I think this clarity around our money really does begin with compassion. And when you think about it, Shaun, we as humans, right, we're often really good at being kind and compassionate and extending empathy and all of these things to other people without even almost a thought sometimes. Somebody messes up and makes a mistake, whether it be financial or otherwise. We're often there to lend support, and oftentimes in non-judgmental and shame-free ways. But we often talk to ourselves much differently. We don't treat ourselves with that kindness and that compassion. And we guilt ourselves and we shame ourselves and we mistreat ourselves and we talk so poorly to ourselves. It's impossible to gain clarity when you're treating yourself the way you would never treat another person, probably not even a stranger on the street. So when you treat yourself like a stranger, that's probably the most uncompassionate thing you can do for yourself. And so getting and leaning into that human side of money, kind of, I mean, the technical specs of personal finance are obviously very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we're leaning towards ourselves and getting to know ourselves and seeking that clarity and taking the shame out of things, that's where we can see what we can do from the action side, from the practical side, from the technical side, and really see what we're made of, because we know ourselves a little bit better.
Your statement, taking the shame out, I really, the great statement. And kind of expanding on your point, that I think if we get the technical side right and we don't take the shame out, those negative conversations that we're having with ourselves for the most part will still persist, despite we might have got the technical side right. What has been your experience on ways that we can, again, your words, take the shame out?
Yeah. I have so many. Um, wow, and I think there's been so many conversations around shame lately. LinkedIn, I think, is a very in our niche, I think it's very active, and we see a lot of talk around shame and trauma and these things, and they're incredibly important things to talk about. So how do we do that? And you're right, we can do everything right technically, but we are not going to find that satisfaction if we continue to see ourselves as the problem. And I think that's the big distinction we need to make, in the realm of shame. If shame exists, and that means you believe that you are the problem. We're feeling guilty about a decision. Yeah, okay, I made the wrong decision. Bad move. Shouldn't have done that. I feel guilt about that. But when you're in the shame space, you truly believe that it is you that is flawed, that there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And so doing that shadow work, I think is really key. And, going back to, work around money scripts, I think is absolutely very powerful. That's been around for quite a while, but it's important work that needs to be done. What are the things I believe about money? Why do I believe those things? Were those things I came up with on my own, or were those things given to me? Did I inherit them from somewhere? I do a lot of work in the debt space now, and it has been a very humbling experience. I had a lot of biases around that industry. Had you asked me 20 years ago if I would have found myself in the position I'm in now, I would have probably been like, yeah, no, no way. I've learned a couple things in that space. The first is debt doesn't discriminate. It doesn't. I've met plenty of people who are, multi six-figure earners who are over their heads in debt just as much as I've met, people who are, on the lower income side of the spectrum. Life happens. That's the human part of being a human being. Life is going to be. And no matter how well you prepare technically, right? Life can still happen. It can still throw you off track. And that said, debt is something you have. It's not who you are. And so it's really moving yourself out of a shame space, whether you're rolling in the dough or you're, just stuck with tremendous amounts of debt over your head. It's not who you are. Your financial situation is not who you are. And I think when we're talking about, things like money scripts or the values we've been given or that we've inherited, I think it's really key to take inventory of what those things are, so you can really get a good sense of, well, who am I in this equation? What is it that works for me? What values work for me? What doesn't work for me any longer? What do I kind of like, and can I modify? What needs to stay, what needs to go? So you can find yourself in a position where you can release yourself from that shame. It's the letting go, and it's the readiness of letting go, so you can propel yourself forward into whatever next iteration, next chapter. But you also have to be ready for that. And so there's, I talk a lot about listening for the readiness. And when you are working with somebody who says, all right, I am getting a sense of who I am, and I'm noticing that my financial actions, my technical stuff isn't really aligning with my values or who I really feel called to be, that's when I immediately come in and say, all right, you don't know what you don't know until you know, and now you know. And if you're ready, because now you know, then we can start letting go of that shame. So there does have to be some sort of awareness involved, and being able to name the shame. The naming of the shame, I think, is a key piece of this too. You got to name it. It's not a fun thing to name.
No.
No.
What that naming, why do you think it has so much power in helping us step towards that readiness?
Oh gosh, I think the answer is kind of easy, but you've I think as a kid, right, you've got monsters in the closets, right? But grown-ups have monsters in their closets, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want people to take their monsters out of the closet, sit them down at the coffee table, I'll pour them a cup of coffee, ask them some questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What purpose have you served? What purpose may you continue to serve? And when are you going to get the heck out of here?
Mm.
It's really once you put a flashlight on the things in the dark that scare you, they can't scare you anymore. Putting names to things takes its power away. And when you can take the power away from something that has power over you and reclaim it for yourself, that's where some magic can really happen. But you have to be brave enough to pick up the flashlight or open that closet door and pour that cup of coffee and ask those monsters come out and dance in the dark with you.
I can't write fast enough for all these great things what was that last part, to dance with you? How was
Dance. Yeah, have a cup of coffee, take a dance, spin
yeah.
around. Spin around.
And you talked about, you used the parts verbiage earlier, and it's really reminding me of with Dick Schwartz's Internal Family Systems, where he talks a lot about the internal parts of us. And what I mean by this, and I see this in this conversation with debt. We're talking about stories earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the most part, when we see debt, especially in ourselves, or if we observationally see debt, we automatically assume a negative story. Debt's bad, which fuels, I'm hearing shame, like I'm bad versus the debt's bad. Or how did you word that? Debt is something you have, not who you are. But we tell ourselves these stories that I'm bad. And in Dick Schwartz's work, he talks about how these parts of us, even the ones that we perceive to be negative, say like envy, that it's not, I'm paraphrasing, or I'm summarizing what he says, but it's not like it's bad and we have to get rid of that part. It's more so that's an adaptive or maladaptive part of us that was wounded some sort, and it's coming out to dance with it or have this cup of coffee. So when it comes to debt, while the narrative might be like debt's bad, I'm bad for having this debt, what stories have you seen people been able to uncover when they start to dance with their debt and not see it for just a number, but like the story behind that debt? And have you noticed people having these maybe transformations, or these at least realizations that the debt is actually telling a story that's worthwhile to them?
Yeah. And I think bringing the family systems conversation into this is really interesting and key, because, so much of our, most kids learn what they're going to learn about money before the age of 9. Which is pretty frightening, especially if you're a parent of children. You're like, oh my gosh, I've got a kid. My daughter is 9, my son is 7, my youngest is 7, and it's like you learn these statistics. You're like, oh my gosh, what have I been teaching these kids about money? And so as we go through our life, the kids are sponges, and so if we don't know what we don't know until we know, when we're grown-ups, we have all of this subconscious stuff that we've been funneling and trying to process. And we've got all these new experiences coming into our lives. We move out of our family system and we're trying to kind of reconcile where we are in the world. And I think one of the very complicating factors when it comes to debt is not only that piece of it, but we don't necessarily have a good sense of who we are, where our direction is going. And we are told so many things about personal finance, like, right, the rights and wrongs, the do's and don'ts, the blacks and whites of personal finance. And so, you just said, like debt is bad, right? How many times have we heard that? There's bad debt and there's good debt. And you need to save 10%, or is it 40%? What's inflation doing? Like, and so there's all this messaging that happens around money, when you're younger, in your environment. And then when you grow up, you've got, as a late teen, early 20s, you're getting a better sense of, what society thinks is the black and whites, the do's, the don'ts, the goods, the bads. And so what I think tends to happen is there's this big gray area that kind of gets forgotten. But people are so focused on doing the good or the bad thing that they forget that there can be some creativity, there can be some flexibility, and there can be fun in this. But when people attach themselves so deeply to a good and a bad behavior and don't really understand that there's a whole lot of gray in the middle, this is where the shame really bubbles up in the debt space. Because so many people do, in my experience and the people I've worked with over the last, number of years, they know what to do with their money. They know. They know that they, should have had an emergency fund. They know that they should have, an investment account. They know. They know. And so they feel very alone. And they do get into debt. The people I've worked with, I mean, the pandemic hangover as far as debt is just, I mean, it's so overwhelming. There's that. But people have health problems. People go through wicked divorces. I've worked with people who have lost family members who, like, due to addiction, and have, carried funeral costs on their credit cards. This is what I talk about when I say debt doesn't discriminate. I've had, like I said, multi six-figure earners who, have been the victims of love scams, like hundreds of thousands of dollars given away. It's the stuff you see on Dr. Phil that nobody thinks is real. It's absolutely real. And it blows my mind every time I see it. And there's so much shame because they know, they know what to do with their money. Yet money still remains taboo to talk about it. We can hardly talk about money when money is good, right? Nobody's going to I made $1 million this year. Yeah. My business is doing so great. Look at me. Nobody says that. I mean, and if they do say it, that's a whole other can of worms, right? Yeah. But if we're hesitant to talk about money when it's good, we're certainly not going to talk about it when it's really bad. Because our money, our credit score, all of these things have become, over the years from society, a measure of our self-worth. Even in the people I work with, in the debt space or who are on a debt journey, so many of these things come up. My dad, if he were still alive, he would die a second time to know that I am not paying my creditors back, or I can't pay my creditors back, because I don't have the money. It's gone. I lost my job. My husband got sick. All of these things. And once people, I think, can, again, from my experience, once people can separate themselves from the debt and look at them as two very separate and different things, that's where change starts to happen. And this isn't, a narrative in, like, shifting blame away. Again, most people know how they got into debt. Most people take accountability for it. But so many people carry the blame that is not theirs to carry. When they can get rid of that, that's where some movement can go forward. When they can say, all right, I know my deceased father would be really upset with me, but he's not here, and I have to do this for myself. And I'm also going to take this as an opportunity to tell a different story for my own children. Like, it's a really interesting cycle of growth and self-discovery that happens. And if anybody has been in debt, whether it's little debt or big debt, or good debt or bad debt, there's so much anxiety and stress and negative repercussions to our, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual health associated with that.
It's, again, so many wonderful things here. This self-discovery, I think, is so fascinating when it comes to our money. In this context, we're talking about debt. Is when we get the courage, and to your point, it's not easy to really foster that curiosity to lean in and not flee from the discomfort. But when we do that, it's so fascinating. Where if someone told me this 10 years ago, I would have been like, what? But if we lean into these money stories, there's the richness of self-discovery. And I would have never thought that 10 years ago. I've been like, wait, you're crazy. You're like, you're probably going to live in Bali, and I don't know. I don't know why I said Bali, but like, you're going to manifest this. But speak to this, like, this richness that comes not all the time. And I don't think it's straightforward as you lean into it and you get this richness, but can you speak, perhaps it could be clients that you've experienced where you're working now, or anywhere, but this richness that may come along with self-discovery?
Mm. I love this question for so many reasons, because it's so much about um, allowing yourself, and this is the allowance piece. This is what I talk about when there's readiness ready to happen, and it moves in this space of allowance where you can, kind of inform and identify what's giving a rise to that discomfort.
Mm.
It's what, all right, I'm going to feel uncomfortable anyway. I already feel uncomfortable. Why? Let me name that discomfort. Let me identify that, and let me take it one step further, and let me invite it in and sit with it in the discomfort, and invite trust and go forward in trust. Even if it's only acknowledging that, I trust that I'm here in this discomfort because there's something to learn here. And that is a powerful switch that can turn on when you allow that pressure on yourself to ease up a little bit and to lean into that discomfort and put it in a space of, maybe not a space, a reframing of self-discovery. Because for so many people I've worked with, financial planning as it is, it's not working. It's just not. And I so relate to what you're saying about 10 years ago. I said it myself, 10, 20 years ago, like self-discovery, the human side of money, financial therapy, psychology, like, oh my gosh, they would have thought we were nuts. Would have thought we were nuts, because this is a process of self-discovery. And money is not just numbers. We talk about how we are just not numbers. I'm not my credit score. I'm not, my mortgage amount. I am not my credit card debt. People are not numbers. People are beings. Mm-hmm. And if we want a shift in being to occur, how are we as an industry, as practitioners, as providers, as just supporters, how are we inviting people to shift in their being? Are we being acutely aware and keenly in tune to whether or not somebody is ready or expressing signs of readiness to explore more than the numbers? And trust is such a key component of that. We want to be your trusted financial advisor. How many times have you heard that? I cringe. I do. Like,
I do too.
I have so many financial planning friends that I respect and love tremendously. Unfortunately, I don't see that as much now. But that was the thing, 10, 15 years ago. That's how you market yourself. I'm gonna be your trusted advisor. Well, everybody's saying that. How do I know who to trust? And when I work with people in my coaching practice in particular, the one thing I always say is, when it comes down to you making decisions, if you're going to trust anybody, it should be yourself. Don't put more trust in me than you put in yourself. And I think that is such a key thing of moving the needle forward into self-discovery, is how do we help people discover themselves enough to where they find that trust in themselves? Because so many people don't trust themselves when it comes to their money, or they might just a little bit. And going back to what I see with people on a debt journey in particular, they know what they're supposed to do with money. And I think this applies to most people. They know enough, of what they should and shouldn't be doing, but they feel dumb to ask questions. They feel like they should know more than they know. And so they might not trust themselves at all. But when you get into a financial situation that is contrary to what you want for yourself, whether that be debt, or you make a bad investment, or any of those things that can happen along this, financial planning spectrum, there's trust in yourself that has to be rebuilt. And that is painful for people. That is uncomfortable. Also a part of the self-discovery process. Painful self-discovery.
I get, and that pain, I think it speaks to what you're talking, that shadow side of us, where when we get to that level of trust, I can imagine so many life lessons that along our self-discovery phase that we can uncover, but it requires that trusting ourselves. When it comes to financial advice, the way you're talking here from a coaching lens, it really interests me because like what you're saying there, if I can sit with a person, a client, however you want to call them, client, person, doesn't matter. But if I can show them, and it seems like this is what you're doing, that I trust you to trust yourself by, if I'm listening to them as the coach and I'm not telling them to do much of our industry has done. I'm hearing a lot of you talk about this trust. How, if anything at all, have you seen the client shift when you're showing that, no, I trust you to make the right decision? I think to me, it speaks to this idea is like when someone trusts me, it gives me permission to trust myself. Do you experience that?
Yeah, it's the allowance. It's I spoke earlier about, being a space holder, and that's how I really treat, my coaching sessions is I am cultivating a space. I'm cultivating, and this comes from, years of, really great, training I've had with really great mentors, but I'm here to hold space for you in a kind and compassionate, shame-free space where we can together explore all of those things, that personal gravity that is holding you down and preventing you from getting to where you want to go. So when I am working with people and they have permission to not only talk about their personal gravity, but also let go of it if they want to. If they want to.
Mm-hmm. You really emphasize that if.
It's that readiness. It's we can get there or maybe we don't, and that's okay. It has everything to do with the readiness. It has everything to do with this process of self-discovery. It has everything to do with moving forward in a way that feels aligned um, with however you want to call it, your soul, your spirit. Something is different about the observations you've made in the past and what you're observing now, and the meaning you're assigning to them in the present now. Because we can spend years and years and years, right, ruminating on all of the things that happened in our childhood, our traumas, our pains, our losses. And then one day we start to think about those things a little bit differently. It's I trust that I'm here. Maybe it's just because there's something here for me to learn. And it might be that I'm just seeing this in a different light. And I'm the one who hands people the flashlight so they can turn it on.
I hear that quoting they turn it on seems like a key word there.
Mm-hmm.
If people listening are thinking that, I'm sensing this readiness in this, while of course the self-discovery is not a quick fix, easy thing, you can say one thing and we got it tomorrow. But say someone's listening and it's really resonating with their soul, to use a word that you just talked about. What would be a way? And I say a way because there isn't the way, but a way that we could start inviting this trust into the self-discovery?
I think the very first thing I would say is let's slow it down. Slow things down a little bit. We, especially if we're, talking in terms of what we're doing with our money or what we're not doing with our money. What we're doing with our careers or our personal lives. I mean, there's so many things. And the thing is, money intersects with all of those things. It's very difficult, right? To, let's say, you want to escape the corporate hustle, right? And you want to lean into your, side hustle. And that's great. I'm a big believer in multiple streams of income. Let's diversify our investments and get multiple streams of income. Perfect, wonderful, awesome. Let's do that. But how do you how do you reconcile, your side hustle being more aligned with your soul or your life's calling or what you feel to be your calling, and the drudge of whatever's holding you back in this job right here, and then money intersects everywhere here, and your spouse is telling you, no, you don't need to quit your job, we can't afford it, and so you get into just this head spin, right? And so it's coming back to yourself a little bit. It's like, all right, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's take things one step at a time. It's a lot like, telling an 18-year-old, hey, if you save $100 a month, you're gonna be a millionaire by the time you retire, like all good. Yet trying to convince 18-year-old to save $100 a month is like going to the dentist. It's very difficult, very hard to pull. So how do we get people to that point? And it's slowing it down and putting things into a more present frame of reference. Let's not talk 5 years into the future. Let's talk about what's going on now. What is it we can work on now that can help you identify the things that are really good, the things you would like to see different, the things that can be worked on now, the things you're ready to work on now. Because, it does happen. We've got some personalities out there who are just like, I just absolutely want to quit my job tomorrow and I'm going to sell, my digital art on Etsy. And that's awesome. But have you ever done that before? Well, no. Okay. Well, let's talk about that. What is driving that? Where is that discomfort coming from? We talk about being uncomfortable. We talk about identifying that. Let's invite that in. Let's talk about those things. I'm going to hand you this flashlight. I invite you to turn it on and let's take a little peek at that. And, and those conversations, go every which way. They do. And sometimes we find things in the dark, dusty corners of said monster closets that we totally forgot were there. And that's kind of the cool stuff that comes up.
I really appreciate this idea of inviting the discomfort in. I think at times the narrative was for a while that if I want to quit my job and sell my art on Etsy, go do it. YOLO, you only live once, like lean into that calling. But you bring a really good point. It's like, what is the origin of that discomfort? And maybe it's hiding something more maybe not more insightful that can lend itself to that self-discovery phase, as opposed to just quickly reacting to it and being like, yes, go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's great advice out there, there's dangerous advice, and there's something somewhere everywhere in between, and I'm a big supporter of, people who want to go, pursue your passions. Great. You want to go host a retreat in Bali. And I love that you said Bali, because I think I think I've been invited to more retreats in Bali than anywhere else in the world. I still haven't been, but I hear it's lovely.
Yeah.
But I think there is that narrative out there, that is, kind of perpetuated. Yeah, you only live once, go live your dreams, go do all of these things. And I certainly want you to go do all the things. I think most people would be like, yeah, go do it. But let's slow it down a little bit. Is this something we have to do right now? What is the villain origin story of your Etsy shop? Let's look into that. And why is it you want to do this? Is it because you're, not happy with your hours at work? Is it because you feel like you'd rather work from home? Or do you feel like you just don't want to work? I mean, it can be all of these things. And so for many people who are in a state of discomfort, I don't necessarily want to call this a grass is greener scenario, because sometimes the grass is greener. And taking a leap of faith can absolutely be what is needed, right? I've taken a few of those in my day, and they were leaps of faith, but they were somewhat prepared leaps of faith. You don't want to necessarily leap blindly, because of the aspect and the role that money plays, in our life. And what I find is when people take a leap of faith and they do it from a place of fear or scarcity, that's where they get in trouble. If they can take the leap of faith and they can leap wholeheartedly. They can leap comfortably. They know what challenges they could potentially run into. They have a whole clear picture, and they take that leap of faith and they're like, I'm going to leap, and whatever happens, happens, and I'm okay either way. That's where things are different. And I think that's the huge distinction. And so for people who are, dealing with discomfort, or they're having a hard time making a decision, that decision could be related to all kinds of things, childhood, their personality type, their relationship status, their job, their location, like all these factors go into that. If they can identify all of these things and piece it together, they can act and make decisions not from a place of fear or lack or discomfort, because they have already worked through the discomfort and the fear and the lack and the scarcity. And that's a really cool place to be.
Yeah. And, not to sound so cliche here, but it seems to me when you act from that space, even if let's talk this Etsy shop, say the Etsy shop doesn't work out, but if you're acting from that place of, the authentic self, you would have learned so much about the self-discovery phase to yourself that it's not a fail because you didn't get the Etsy shop. I'm sure there's tons of valuable lessons. Whereas I think if you jumped on that Etsy shop and it got super busy and you actually hated it and you're running from something, now you're this Etsy famous person. I don't know if they have those, but if they did, and now you're making pictures you didn't want to make because you're running from fear. So
yeah. And then you put yourself in that same cycle, right? And so, and I do see that running dynamic. It's like kind of running, chasing dynamic that we see. And I have seen that. I think one of the stories that resonates most with me is, I worked with a person who was a coach, like a life coach, and had made a complete career change, quit job, decided I'm going to be a life coach. Lots of good life experience, not knocking the person or anything like that. So went and got a coaching certification. Great first step. Went and got another one. Went and got another one. And so we ended up with a life coach with a ton of certifications, but no clients, no marketing strategy. Tens of $1,000s in debt with coaching certifications. What it really came down to was I'm running from the idea that I'm not good enough with just this one coaching certification. I need to have all of these before I can go market myself as somebody who is a valuable life coach. And that had pretty significant financial consequences attached to it. And so it's really helping people try to find out, in this process of self-discovery, that you can be good enough. Good enough is okay. Like it doesn't have to be perfection. We hear that practice, makes perfect, right? Practice makes progress. The goal should be progress, not perfection. Whether it's personal goals, career goals, financial goals, it's making the progress towards that. And anytime we attach perfection, we automatically start discounting the trust we have in ourselves. Automatically do that. And I see that a lot, with people who think another degree, another certification, that this is somehow going to make them seem better. Well, if you've got enough to get going, make that progress. You don't have to do it all right now. And it's releasing that pressure valve that I was talking about. It's leaning into that discomfort. It's exploring that trust, inviting that trust in, and allowing yourself to release that pressure valve on you a little bit and make some transformations in your own life. And that's something only you can do. Nobody external can do that for you. Even the best coach or financial planner or advisor, if a person doesn't want to do something, they're not going to do it. We're all flashlight holders in a way.
We are all flashlight holders in a way. That is really good. Erika, I went into a bit of a trance as I thought you were talking to me. There's this thing that I'm delaying doing, and education has always been a thing that I've like, oh, I'll go do that. And then, that'll make me feel like I have a voice, or I'll be noticed. And seriously, you were talking, I was like zoned in. I'm like, wait, no, I'm doing a podcast right now. This isn't, but it's very true. I mean, that was, I'm glad we recorded that section. I'm going to go back and listen to it.
You would like to talk a little bit after? I'm happy to
Yeah.
help you through that. But it's true. We put so much pressure on ourselves to be and do better. But when is enough enough?
Mm-hmm.
We can't take it with us when we go. And it's better to start than to not start. It's better to make do with what you have than to forget about what you do have. We are so easy to dismiss ourselves as a resource because a lot of us haven't been taught that we are a resource, that we have to get validation from our colleagues, our peers, our professors, our mentors, our friends, our family. And we forget what it means to seek internal validation. And that is something that can only come when you trust yourself. And when it comes to our finances, I think there's, one thing I definitely want to highlight here is cultivating trust in yourself when it comes to your money doesn't mean that you have to know the answer to everything. You and I were joking before we went on about my love for estate planning and all things taxes, right? I say that very tongue in cheek. I don't know enough about estate planning or taxes to feel confident that I could, in 10 years be able to tackle that on my own. So I'm not going to spend, 20 hours on Google trying to figure out how to do my estate plan or, long-term tax planning. I'm going to call somebody about that. That is trust in yourself. That's knowing that I don't have to do everything. I can call a few people and say, hey, these are the questions I've got. This is what I'm looking for. Can you help me? You do not have to know everything about everything. And once you release that pressure off when it comes to your money, I think that's huge. It's leaning into the things you're really good at, owning that, having fun with it. But it's also leaning into the idea that I don't have to know everything about everything. Even though sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to know, it's okay that I don't. And that's why there are people who do these things for a living. It's hard for people to do that. It's hard for people to not feel like they simultaneously have full ownership of their money, but no control over it. That's hard. That's a really hard place to be.
As you're talking about this, I can't help but hear the lyrics to my daughter. She's 5. His favorite song, Let It Go by Frozen.
Oh, yeah.
I listen to that song. I'm like, there's a lot of wisdom in here. Let it go. What I'm hearing you say is that I think that there's wisdom in that ability to let it go, that I don't need to know the estate planning side. And I'm not less than for not knowing. In fact, I mean, that's a lot of self-awareness to be like, okay, I'm okay with this, that I want to lean on some help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to lean on some help. Does the rain really bother you that much, Elsa? No, it doesn't. I like when it rains.
Yeah.
I like it. And I like to stay inside when it rains. I enjoy watching it. But do I want to be out in the rain? Not necessarily. The cold, don't want to be out in it. It's okay. But the estate planners, they like it. The tax planners, they like it. That's their cold. That's their rain. Let yourself find safety in the spaces that don't bother you. If you know that budgeting doesn't bother you and you're pretty good at it, focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important skill. That's really hard. Like budgeting, dieting, like it often doesn't work for a lot of different reasons. But if that's something you're good at, lean into that and let other people take care of the rest. Don't you can like being financially stable. You can like all of these things, but it doesn't mean that you have to be in the weeds with it. You just don't. And you don't have to know everything there is to know about it. It's important to be informed. Again, we don't want to take a completely hands-off approach, but you should definitely know, who you're working with. But trust yourself to know that you can make good decisions and who you hire on your financial team.
I see the time, and I want to respect your time here as this conversation has flown by for me. It seems like as we come to wrapping up here that we start out talking about stories, your money story. And as we know, money tells stories. And I guess what I'm really hearing is the more we lean into the process of self-discovery and get that flashlight that we hold, it gives us the opportunity to really come home to ourselves. And it seems like that's where this peace, contentment, and ease comes from. And it makes me think of this idea that I brought up Elsa's song, but in life, like this process is really neat because we only have one song to sing, and we don't get another song. And I like this conversation around really inviting that discomfort so we can come home to ourselves. And I would have never thought I would be talking this in around money, but here we are. So thank you for today.
Oh, thank you. And, and I love that because, I work with a lot of amazing people and I'm thrilled to be doing the work I do. But at the end of the day, all of us are just walking each other home.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's home to ourselves. Sometimes it's home, but there are so many beautiful stories yet to be written. And it's helping people find the pen, pick it up and write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. Good in life is temporary, bad in life is temporary, but we're not alone. And when you know that you're not alone, whether you're in debt or you're struggling with trying to figure out investing or whatever it is you're dealing with, or building a business, or how am I going to, sell my financial coaching services to people if you're an entrepreneur, in your case, like, how am I going to build this podcast? How am I going to make it, something meaningful and human? And all of us have a story. And if anybody who tells you they don't have a story, well, they're just not telling you the truth. And the more we can share our stories with each other in these kind and compassionate spaces, the better humankind is going to be as a result. And the less shame we will feel, and the more connected and whole we will feel, not only to ourselves, but to those around us. And that's a glorious, beautiful thing, isn't it?
That is glorious and beautiful. I mean, that just felt good in the fibers of my being. I recall being at a financial planning conference like 10, 15 years ago, and this guy's like, as financial planners, we got to really show our financial house. So he's like, so here I am. And he's like showing all his net worth and all these hard numbers things. He's like, I show clients this. And it just felt wrong. Anyways, what you said just feels, I guess, this idea of coming home to ourselves. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this conversation. Now, not to go away from ourselves in this context. Oh no, before I go into this question here, your money story. What if you had to write a book today about your money story, where you are at your journey? What would the title of the book be?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. This is such an on the spot question.
I'm sorry, it was on the spot.
Oh God, what would it be? What's yours?
Well, I'll tell you. The title of my book would be Finding Mr. Shy. And I need Finding Mr. Shy. I would need a catchy subtitle, but it would be Finding Mr. Shy. And maybe Mr. Shy is my inner money critic. But oh, see, you put me on the spot. Now I'm just that's a tough question. Maybe I should delete this question.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't know what mine would be. I've never been asked this question. It's a great question though.
I'm gonna think about mine too. Perhaps by the time we release it, we can put both of ours in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do the show notes.
Okay,
'Cause
show notes.
I feel like mine would be something like along the lines of like it would something be like millennial related. Because I'm an old millennial.
Mhm.
I just turned 40 this last year and I'm feeling it. So
Well, happy
what?
birthday.
Millennial adventures and dating,
Oh,
debt, discovery. I don't know.
yeah.
Something fun. I don't know. Show notes.
Show notes. Show notes it is. Okay. Now, my curiosity has been percolating since I've been preparing for this.
Okay.
How on earth did you co-found a national holiday?
Well, um, when we look back into the things I never thought I would do in my career, that was one of them. But no, so really, it was born of me starting to explore the debt space a little bit and really start to help people, along their debt journeys. And, financial literacy month is every April, as we know. And, financial literacy is just obviously very important. One of the things I think I've observed and really kind of spurred, this discussion, how do we move people beyond debt or the financial patterns or behaviors that, really kind of keep them held back? And, financial literacy, again, is wonderful. But sometimes it's a lot like learning French in high school. And if we don't practice it daily, we lose the information, or we have a general idea of, again, what we should be doing, good, bad, in between, but we don't know actually how to put that into practice. And so that was really, built upon, building upon financial literacy by really encouraging and engaging people in a daily practice of those new financial behaviors or the things they're learning about themselves in the process of self-discovery. So that's when National Financial Practice Week was born. It coincides with Financial Literacy Month. It is the last full week of April. This year, it is April 22nd through 26th, and it is its first year. Isn't that exciting?
That is so exciting.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, well done. Like you talk about or people talk about system change, and there it is.
Yeah.
So
I just really want people to not forget to practice what they learn or explore. And it's that curiosity. It's keeping things real. It's we can hear things, and we hear things in passing, and we know that financial literacy, for all it does, it falls short because there's no continuous or limited, I don't want to say no, very limited continuous engagement, in our society and in our social structures to really help keep people going. And if we can just keep practicing, keep working on those new financial behaviors, whether they're coming from the inside or the outside. I know we're not talking about external validation here, but like, what are we learning? What are we healing from? And how can we bring that to what we do every day to help get us better with money?
well done. That is, I mean, so many accomplishments you've had, and this, to be on that level of impact is fantastic. I'm in Canada, so we'll have to observe it from up north. But and our financial literacy month is November, so I didn't
Oh,
realize we were
okay.
different. Yeah.
All right.
I guess it's when we're about to all freeze up here in November. And now my final question, and it might catch you off guard again, not as concisely as a book title, but I've asked every guest this question.
Okay.
Let's imagine now you're at end of life, whatever age it is. You're in a place that brings you complete ease, peace, and contentment, and you're sitting on this front porch. Maybe it's in Bali, I don't know, but you're looking out, you're looking out at the ocean, a meadows, whatever it is, and you're at complete ease, and you decide to write a letter to your children's children on what you learned on how to have a happy, healthy relationship with money. What would be a theme to that letter?
It would be very much rooted in don't stop believing in magic. As we age, I think about being a kid, right? Or I watch my children now, and they approach everything right now, obviously, through the eyes of a child. There's so much magic and wonder in the world. And over time, we forget that magic exists. We can't see it anymore. And I've been a person who's always clung on to the idea that magic still exists, no matter what anybody tells me. Magic still exists. But you have to look for it. You have to look for it, because there's going to be a lot of people who tell you that it doesn't exist. And I'm not talking about magical thinking here. I want to make that clear. But while so many people are looking for the negative in life, the triggers, if you will, look for the glimmers. Look for the joy, look for the hope, look for the things that you have that bring you happiness in your present every day. And hold on to those things tightly, because there are so many systems and institutions and people who will try and take that magic away from you. And that magic is always in you, and that's where it will remain. But you have to be on the lookout for the magic. And once you stop looking for the magic, all downhill from there. That would be my theme. That would be my letter. And then I'm a Slytherin, so we're a big Harry Potter family. So I would definitely have some sort of Harry Potter reference in that as well. But
Do you know the reference? I guess the letter has not been written.
it would be something along the lines of like, Slytherins are better than Gryffindor.
Okay. This is going to be a great letter. No one has said don't stop believing the magic yet, and it's so great. When you said that we see your kids, I forget exactly what you said, but they see life through, I don't know the word you said, but basically play and are fun. And I just recently read the book called The Fun Habit by Dr. Michael Rucker. He studies fun. He's gonna be on the podcast, but so fun was.
I need to look it up.
Yeah, it's a great book. Fun's been on my mind, but it kind of coincides with this magic. But the other day when it was -40 here it is, talking about the cold again. A friend of mine, he's a dad. We're picking our kids up after school, and they're freezing at the door waiting for the kids. And I decided I'm like, I'm going to have fun. And I ran at him as if it was our two 7-year-olds seeing each other, running at him. And I just went up and gave him a big hug. And he's like, what are you doing? And it was fun. It was a bit magic. So anyways, your thing made me think of that.
Yeah, that's the magic. It's in the little things. It's in the things that bring you joy.
Well,
and
thank you.
Sometimes don't have an explanation. Sometimes things don't have an explanation. And that's okay. Let the good things happen without explanation have the meaning of magic for you. Yeah. It's been fun.
This has been very fun. We said it was going to be fun before we recorded.
Fun. We set the tone for fun.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been fun.
Thank you so much. For listeners who want to have more fun and look at the work that you're doing, where would you point them to? We're going to talk about your crypto goddess side, and we didn't get to. I was very curious, but I got 2 minutes left. So another conversation, but where would you point people to?
Yeah, we can, so the best way to reach out to me or connect with me is on LinkedIn. That's pretty much my hub, if you will, in terms of socials. Socials freak me out otherwise, like TikTok. Can't do it, at least not yet. I'm working on it. LinkedIn is the best place to find me. If you want to get in touch with me directly, my email is Erika, Erika, Rasure, Rasure @gmail.com. Feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a conversation, meet new friends, talk about how we can all help walk each other home.
I like that. Walk each other home.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'll include those in the show notes, and possibly, I don't want to overcommit, but our book titles for money stories. And thank you again.
Overcommit.
Yeah.
Wait, under promise, overcommit or something?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
And under promise. You do that too. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been
Yes.
wonderful. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.